Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a beer, it's time for some Path of Exile discussion. Today I wanted to talk about the most exciting build that I have seen being played in the Endless Delve event. This is definitely going to get nerfed. This is one of those things that is completely and utterly ridiculous and will probably end up dominating the entirety of the top end of the ladder for this event. So if you want to play it, definitely do it during this Endless Delve event, because I don't think that all of the pieces will still work together in the future the way they do now. However, this build was brought to my attention by a player called Findar. I will put a link to Findar's YouTube channel and Reddit post that outline this down in the description of this video below. Highly recommend that you check them out. Usually when one person comes up with one ridiculous build, chances are they will come up with more in the future, and so Findar is definitely worth following for that reason. So how does the build work? It's the interaction of several mechanics. The first one is Infernal Cry. Infernal Cry inflicts a debuff on enemies. So this is a war cry, and all the enemies that are within the war cry radius get a debuff on them. And this debuff, which is called Combust, inflicts a corpse explosion on them when they die. So when the enemy dies, if it's still affected by this debuff, it will corpse explode. This corpse explosion will deal 8% of the monster's maximum life as fire damage to everything around it. The reason this is so great in Delve is that Delve scales monster hit points up to the stratosphere. And as a result, it's really difficult to keep up the amount of damage that's necessary to keep progressing down in the Delve mines before you get overwhelmed. But if you're using something like Infernal Cry, all you need to do is really just kill one enemy, and then when that enemy dies, it will inflict a lot of damage on everything around it. So that's the starting point of the build. The second interaction is with Ignite. Now, Ignite was buffed into the stratosphere in 3.16. The base amount of damage that Ignite does was multiplied by 2.5. Now, for a lot of skills, there were all that were associated with Ignite, like Armageddon Brand, Fireball, and a few others. There were also some nerfs to those skills and their inherent synergies with Ignite. But generally speaking, every single one of them ended up stronger than it was when used to Ignite. However, Infernal Cry had no synergy to lose with Ignite. And as a result, Infernal Cry with Ignite does 2.5 times as much damage as it did in 3.15 or 3.14 or 3.13 or going back further. It's not quite 2.5 times as much damage as, say, in 3.13, because some of the support gems you would link to it are not as good as they were then, but it still does a lot more damage than at any previous point in the game. It might be, might be 180, 190% of the damage this build would do in 3.13 if it was possible then. Now, the next thing that's important, and this is only possible in Endless Delve, is Ashes of the Sun. So this is a unique item that is given as a starter unique to some of the classes you might choose to play in this event. And it does a few things. So firstly, it's got a tiny little bit of extra fire damage on it, some attack speed, as if you were going to use this as an attack weapon. But then it has the reasons you're using it. 25% increased burning damage, that's nice. It's very replaceable. 30% chance to ignite, that's nice, it's very replaceable. But 500% increased ignite duration on enemies. This mod is fantastic. This is the only reason that you're using Ashes of the Sun, and it is tremendous. It means that instead of inflicting instead of Infernal Cry setting enemies on fire for 4 seconds by default, it sets them on fire for 24 seconds by default. Needless to say, this is a buff. And it turns out that this is the single best piece of equipment that is possible in the weapon slot for this build. So use that alongside any defensive shield you want. May I suggest Remnant of Empires if you'd consider that for your build. And then, once you've done that, you rush to the end of a node. You will need phasing. You can use phase run, you can use a quartz flask, use whatever means you want to get to the end of the node, and then you kill one monster by any means necessary. You will also be using Infernal Cry, so you make sure that one enemy dies while it's affected by Infernal Cry. When this happens, all the monsters that are close to that will probably also be affected by Infernal Cry. They will also corpse explode. That's actually not what you're looking for. What you're looking for is a monster that is not affected by Infernal Cry to also inflict an ignite on that. So you'll inflict a hit for 8% of the monster's damage, for 8% of one of the monster's life of damage on an enemy that doesn't corpse explode. And that enemy will then proceed to continue to burn with Ignite Proliferation, and so will their corpse after they die. That monster will be on fire for 24 seconds, potentially modified further by other support gems you might be using, and that are linked to Infernal Cry, and this will cause absolute devastation amongst the enemies that are struck by it. Now, if you're interested in playing this build yourself, definitely go and check out Findar's information in his Reddit post, and as I said, link to that down below. But definitely do it this league. You will not be able to play this in the future. It's definitely going to get nerfed. I don't think there's any question about it, because I'm expecting that the top 3 deepest people in the mines will be elementalists that are using this setup, and the characters that don't get quite as deep will be other Ascendancies that are using this same setup, but that are doing so on a different Ascendancy entirely. The way you would do it on a different Ascendancy, so if you're an Elementalist, you gain access to the Shaper of Flames node. Shaper of Flames causes your hits to always ignite, allows all non-fire damage to ignite as though it were fire damage, and also grants 25% more damage with ignites you inflict for hits where the highest damage type is fire. All of this is good for this build. But if you don't have access to that, you have 30% chance to ignite based upon the Ashes of the Sun item. You can then also find another 70%, maybe even you can't quite get 100%, but you can get a bunch of it on the tree and also from support gems, and that can then also increase your chance to ignite, which can then allow you to spread your Infernal Cry damage further. Fundamentally, though, the reason this build works is because of the unique scaling present in Delve, where standard monsters can end up with tens of millions or even hundreds of millions of hit points. And when you kill a monster with 100 million hit points with Infernal Cry, that's going to be a very, very, very big ignite. That's all I got on this. May your Varlobs have interesting results. And if you're looking to go absolutely crazy in the Endless Delve event, this might just be the build for you.